So I'm curious, like, how y'all got started doing camp.
That's a good question.
That is a good question.
Tessa and I never shut the fuck up about this story.
Yeah, we talk about it a lot. It's a good story.
It's a great story. So I had just started doing stand-up comedy. I had just had this very bizarre sexual experience with a human being that went really poorly for me. And I told a friend of mine, Ben Maroney, I told him I pegged a guy for the first time and he pooped on everything and I freaked out. So I told Ben and he was like, you have to tell everybody that story. Like, do it on a microphone. I was like, I'm gonna. So I went to this open mic and I was the last person up. Tessa thankfully put me up. I ran the light by 10 minutes?
Yeah, oh yeah. She was supposed to do 4 minutes. She did at least 10. Yeah, it was great. Maybe
but
15.
I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And Tessa was kind enough to let me finish the story. And then afterwards she was like, oh my God, you have to do this show called The Blackout Diaries, which is
it's like a drinking story show in Chicago. It took a couple months to get her on the show.
Yes.
Because they also book regular people. That's a long story. They also book regular people on the show The Blackout Diaries. So I got to do it right away because I was so new in comedy that they thought I was just like a regular person. So
instead of a freak.
instead of a comic, which I was really like 3 weeks into stand up, so I might as well have been. And Sam, turns out, ironically, was the same exact situation, although I didn't know that. So I pitched her like, oh, my friend, she's a comic, super great. Little did I know when I saw Sam do that open mic, my open mic, and tell the story, that was her third open mic ever. So like she was super new into comedy, ends up getting on Blackout Diaries. In the time that it took, like those couple months, we became good friends.
I had been going to the Village Tap, which is across the street from my house, and also across the street from my job. Like, I would go there every day after work. Oops.
We decided we wanted to do something together, and I'd been running this open mic for a while, and there was just kind of like drama going down at the venue. The venue's now closed, but there was just some stuff that had happened that I was not cool with, and I wanted to leave and start a showcase. I was like, I love running an open mic, giving me a lot of experience, but like I want to be able to pick the performers and control the room a little bit more and like create a vibe and work in a place that feels safe to me. So we decided we would work together.
Well, Tessa was telling me we were hanging out on my stoop, and she was explaining to me like all of this fucked up shit that happened at the place where she was running the open mic. And I was like, oh, cool. And then I like quit in a rage from my job briefly. They took me back, thank God. But I went in crying to the owner of this bar, just like, fuck that place, like, I don't care, I'm gonna try comedy. And he's like, oh my God, you have to. That's a great idea. It was just like the most supportive, blindly supportive person. And he was like, have the beer garden in the back, do whatever you want with it. And I was like, I don't well, let's see if I'm like funny first. Let me give it a dry run really quick. So then this is like 6 months after we had that conversation. Tessa and I are having this talk on my porch, and I was like, well, if you want to run a show, I know the guy who owns the tap, so why don't you just have that? I'll just give you his info. And she was like, no, what? Why don't we just do something? And I was like, oh.
Yeah, I don't like it. I've learned through the process of camp especially that I don't work well. I'm not self-motivated, I guess. Like I need at least one other person to like bounce ideas off of and talk incessantly and text nonstop, message all the time and like please give me compliments. But I don't work well by myself. I don't like working by myself. It's just not my personality. I'm like very extroverted, so I get energy from people. So I was like, I can't do this by myself. And we started with like one concept, which was very opposite of what it ended up as. We were gonna call the show. We were gonna have it originally be like an open mic showcase hybrid, and I think that was just because we were such open mic comics that like
we didn't know anything else.
We were like, well, open micers are our friends, and like we get to perform at open mics because everybody does, and like no one was booking us, so I feel like we didn't have the confidence to just at first. So we at first were like, let's do open micers versus showcase comedians and call it Village Tap Out, and it'll be like a smackdown type of thing. Oh my God, it was so bad.
It was the worst idea. The logo I made was a boxing glove in a mic stand. Like, go home.
Yeah, it was like a boxing glove holding the mic stand. It was really bad.
And then, so we had this idea and we were like pretty set on it. And then we also wrote down like a list of our values, like what we want the audience to get out of the experience, what we want out of it, what we want our comics to feel.
Did on a legal pad in columns. We wrote down like everything we wanted. We wrote first what we wanted to get out of it. We were like, we want to become better comics. Like we want to perform more and like polish everything up. And then what we wanted our comics to feel. And then the audience was probably like the longest list. Like we want people to feel, because that to me that was like, that's what's gonna make people come back. It's not about. There's some million great stand-up shows in the city. To me, it was like if you can make people feel a certain way, and that was always. I worked in like the bar industry for a long time, so that was always how I saw successful bars operate. Like if you, as a bartender or a server, can create a feeling for someone when they come into your bar, like that's something that they remember, and that's what the Village Tap.
As a bar patron, that is exactly why I went to the Village Tap every day.
Is like a very.
It's like a living room. It's like a Roscoe Village living room. Everyone goes there. Some people are there all the time. They become your best friends.
Yep, now me also there all the time. But we wanted our audience to like leave with a feeling, not just like, oh, we saw a show. It's like, how does this show make them feel?
Why would they come back?
Right. It's not just to see good comedy, because you could see good comedy anywhere. We wanted it to stand out in a way that was like people actually get something from it and feel something that they didn't feel before, which is like community and friendship, and they feel warm and positive and uplifted. Like we want people to feel good.